Vito, Clemenza said, Mariposa's not going to like what he hears. Tomasino wants Brasi out of the picture now, and Mariposa wants to keep Tomasino happy. When Vito only shrugged, Clemenza looked to Zhenko for support. Zhenko turned away. Clemenza laughed in a way that suggested he was amazed. First, he said, Mariposa tells us to find out who's been stealing from him, and we don't deliver. Then he tells us to take care of Brazzi, and we tell him when we get around to it. Que minchia, Vito, we're asking for trouble. Vito took another sip of his drink. Why? He asked Clemenza quietly. Would I want to get rid of somebody who puts the fear of God into Mariposa? And not just Mariposa, Tessio said. Clemenza opened his hands. What choice do we have? Vito said, Tell Joe we'll take care of Luca Brazzi. Tell him we're working on it. Just do what I say, please. I don't want him or Cinquemani going after Brazzi. I want them to think we're doing the job. Clemenza fell back in his chair as if defeated. He looked to Tessio. Vito, Tessio said, and he moved from the door to the desk. Forgive me, but on this I have to side with Clemenza. If Mariposa comes after us, we're no match. He can wipe us out. Vito sighed and folded his hands in front of him. He looked to Zhenko and nodded. Listen, Zhenko said. He hesitated, searching for the best words. We wanted to keep this between me and Vito, he said, because there was no need to take a chance on anyone slipping up and getting Frankie Pentangeli bumped off. Clemenza clapped his hands, understanding immediately. Frankie's with us? I always loved that son of a bitch. He's too good to be with scum like Mariposa. Clemenza, Vito said, God love you. I trust you with the lives of my children, but... He paused and raised a finger. You love to talk, Clemenza. And about this, you make even a little slip, and our friend will suffer. Vito, Clemenza said, hand to God. You have nothing to worry about. Good, Vito said, and again he nodded to Zhenko. Mariposa's coming after us, Zhenko said. We know this from Frankie. It's just a matter of time. Son of a bitch, Clemenza said, interrupting. The decision's already been made? Si, Zhenko said. While Mariposa and his boys... For now, Zhenko said, Giuseppe's biding his time. But Frankie says he's planning something with the Barzinis. They're keeping him on the outside so he doesn't know what it is, but he knows something's going on, and when he finds out, we'll know. For now, though, with the Leconti mess, they're not ready to make a move. So what are we supposed to do? Clemenza asked. Sit around and wait till they decide to come after us? We have an advantage, Vito said, and he stood with his strega in hand and went around to his seat at the desk. With Frankie on the inside, we're in a position to know what Joe's planning. He took a cigar from the desk drawer and began unwrapping it. Mariposa's thinking about the future, he said. But so am I. With repeal coming, I'm looking at new ways of doing business. Right now, the Dutch Schultzes and the Legs Diamonds. Vito looked disgusted. These people, in the newspapers every other day, these hotshots. They have to go. I know that, and Giuseppe knows it. We all know it. There's too many clowns out there who think they can do whatever they want. Every 2 blocks, there's another big shot. That has to end. Giuseppe thinks he can run everything, make no mistake, Vito said, and he snipped the end off his cigar. Joe's like that idiota, Adolf Hitler in Germany. He's not stopping till he has it all. Vito paused, lit his cigar, and puffed on it. We have plans, he said. I don't know how yet, but Luca Brazzi may be helpful. Anybody who scares Mariposa could be helpful to us, so we'll do our best to keep him alive. And the punks that are stealing from Mariposa? It's in our interest to find out who they are and give them to Joe. So we'll keep trying to do that. If we can give them the punks and stall them on Brasi, and we keep Frankie alive and working with us. Again, Vito paused. He looked around the room at his friends. With God's help, when the time comes, we'll be ready. Now, he said, and he pointed to the study door. Forgive me, but I've had a hard day. Clemenza took a step toward Vito as if he had more to say, but Vito held up his hand and went to the window. He turned his back on Clemenza and the others and stared out onto the street as they all left the room. When the study door closed, he sat in the window seat and looked across Hughes Avenue to the red-brick two-family houses that rose above the slate sidewalk. He looked to the houses, but his eyes were turned inward. The previous night, the night before he went to see Luca Brasi, he dreamed he was in Central Park by the fountain, looking into a steamer trunk at a mangled body. He couldn't make out the identity of the body, but his heart was pounding because he feared to see who it was. He leaned over the trunk, closer and closer, but he couldn't make out the face on the body, all horribly crumpled and stuffed into the cramped space. Then two things happened fast together in the dream. First, he looked up and saw the huge stone angel atop the fountain pointing at him. Then he looked down and the body in the steamer trunk reached up and grabbed his hand as if imploring him for something. And Vito woke up with his heart raging. Vito, who always slept soundly, lay awake through most of that night, his thoughts scurrying everywhere. And then in the morning, as he read the newspaper with his coffee, he came across a photograph of the kid, Nicky Crea, in Central Park, stuffed into the steamer trunk with the angel atop the fountain, pointing at him. The photo was buried several pages deep in the paper, part of a follow-up story on the murder. No suspects, no witnesses, no clues. Donnie O'Rourke turned the corner onto 9th Avenue and stopped to tie his shoelace. He rested his foot on the base of a lamppost and looked up and down the street as he took his time with the laces. The neighborhood was quiet, a couple of mugs dressed to the nines walking along the sidewalk and laughing with a good-looking dame between them. An older woman with a brown paper bag in her arms and a kid at her side. Out on the street, cars rolled by regularly, and a peddler pushed his empty cart while he whistled a tune likely only he could identify. It was late in the afternoon and unseasonably warm, the end of a gorgeous day when everyone had been out taking in the blue skies and bright sunlight. Once he was satisfied that he wasn't being followed or watched, Donnie proceeded up the block to an apartment building where he had rented a place with Sean and Willie. Their rooms were on the first floor, up one flight of stairs from the building entrance, and as soon as Donnie entered the small foyer with its white and black tiled floor, the basement door to the right of the staircase flew open. One of Luca's boys aimed a pistol at his head. Donnie considered going for his gun, but then another one of Luca's gang, the one with the bandaged hand, came out of the basement behind the first guy, and he was holding a sawed-off shotgun at waist level, aimed at Donnie's balls. "Don't be stupid," he said. "Luca just wants to talk to you." He pointed down to the basement with the sawed-off, while the first guy frisked Donnie and found both the pistol in his shoulder holster and the snub-nose strapped to his ankle. In the basement, Luca was stretched out on a beat-up clawfoot chair next to the furnace. The stuffing in the seat and chair back was sticking out in white puffs, where the animal skin-patterned fabric was ripped in a jagged Z, and the claw on the rear right leg was broken off, so that the chair tilted back awkwardly. Luca leaned back in the chair with his arms behind his head and his legs crossed. He was wearing dress slacks and an undershirt, and his shirt and jacket and tie were draped over a matching, equally dilapidated clawfoot chair to his right. Hooks Battaglia stood behind Luca with his hands thrust in his pockets, looking bored. Another guy with his hand in his pants, scratching himself, stood behind Hooks. Donnie nodded to Hooks. "You mix," Luca said, as Paulie and Jojo pushed Donnie in front of the chair. "You start a war with me, and then you walk around without bodyguards like you don't have a care in the world. What's wrong with you? You didn't think I'd find this place?" Donnie said, "Go fuck yourself, Luca." "See?" Luca said, and he looked behind him to Hooks. See why I like this guy? He pointed to Donnie. He's not scared of me, he said. And he's not scared of dying. How can you not like a guy like that? Donnie said to Hooks, I'd rather wind up dead than bootlicking for the likes of him. Hooks shook his head slightly, as if to warn Donnie off his belligerence. Luca said, So who do you want a bootlick for, Donnie? We all got a bootlick for somebody. He laughed and added, Except me, of course. Donnie said, What do you want, Luca? You gonna kill me now? I'd rather not kill you. Luca looked behind him at the furnace and then above him where a pair of big pipes ran along the ceiling. I like you, he said, turning his attention back to Donnie. I'm sympathetic, he added. You had a nice thing going, you and the rest of the Irish, and then me and all the scungili eaters. That's what you call us sometimes, right? Me and the rest of the scungili eaters come along and screw it up for you. You Micks used to run the whole show. I understand how having us come in and kick your sorry drunk asses back into the gutter, I understand how that might get your goat. I'm sympathetic. Isn't that big of you now? Donnie said. You're all heart, Luca. That's the truth, Luca said, and sat up straight in the wrecked chair. I don't want to kill you. Not even after all you done to deserve it. I got Kelly to think of, too. That's a factor, me being with your sister. You're welcome to her, Donnie said. She's all yours. She is a whore, Luca said, and then smiled when Donnie's face darkened and he looked like he wanted to tear Luca's heart out. But even so, she's my whore. Rotten hell, Luca Brazzi, Donnie said. You and all of yours. Probably, Luca said, and then shrugged off the curse. You know what that bank stick-up cost me? He asked, a touch of anger coming into his voice for the first time. And still, I really don't want to kill you, Donnie, because like I say, I'm sympathetic. Luca paused dramatically and then threw up his hands. But I gotta kill Willie, he said. He tried to kill me. He shot up a couple of my boys. He made a big noise about coming after me. Willie has to go. Luca motioned to Vinny and Jojo standing side by side, leaning against the furnace. Jojo reached down to his feet and came up with a length of rope. Paulie joined the others in tying Donnie's wrists and hanging him from the pipes, so that he had to stand on his toes to keep from dangling in the air. Donnie looked to Hooks, who remained as motionless as a statue beside Luca. I was hoping to avoid this, Luca said. He got up with a groan from his crippled chair. Sure you were, Donnie said. It's a crying shame the ugly things this world makes you do, Luca, isn't it? Luca nodded as if impressed with Donnie's insight. He danced a little, like a boxer warming up, throwing rights and lefts at the air, before he neared Donnie and said, You sure? Donnie sneered. Get on with it. I'm bored. Luca's first punch was a single, mean right to the stomach, which left Donnie dangling from the pipes and gasping for air. Luca watched him in silence until he could breathe normally again, giving him a chance to rethink his decision. When Donnie didn't speak, he hit him again, a single blow, this time to the face, bloodying his mouth and nose. Again, Luca waited, and when again Donnie didn't speak, Luca went at him, dancing around him, throwing hard combinations of punches to Donnie's ribs and stomach, his arms and his back, like a boxer working a heavy bag. When he finally stopped, with Donnie choking and spitting blood, he shook out his hands and laughed. Cazzo, he said, looking to Hooks. He's not going to do it. Hooks shook his head, agreeing. To Donnie, Luca said, You're not going to call your brother, are you? Donnie tried to speak, but couldn't get out a coherent word. His lips and chin were bright red with blood. What? Luca asked, stepping closer, and Donnie managed to sputter. "Fuck you, Luca Brazzi." Luca said, "That's what I thought." "Okay. You know what, then?" He went to the chair where his clothes were hanging. He wiped blood off his hands with a rag and put on his shirt. "I'll leave you hanging here until someone finds you." He pulled his tie through his collar and then put on his jacket and approached Donnie again. "You sure about this, Donnie?" he asked. "Because, maybe, just for the hell of it, we'll pick up Willie and ask him to give you up. And maybe he won't be so loyal." Donnie managed a bloody smile in response. "If that's the way you want it," Lucas said, fixing his tie. "We'll leave you here hanging, and then in a few days, a few weeks, sometime soon, I'll find you or Willie, and we'll talk it over again." He patted Donnie a couple of times on the ribs, and Donnie threw his head back in pain from the slight blows. "You know why I'm doing it this way?" Luca asked. "Because I like this. This is my idea of fun." To Hooks, Luca said, "Let's go." And then he noticed Vinny with his hands down his pants, scratching himself. "Vinny," he said, "didn't you get that taken care of yet?" To Donnie, he said, "Kid's got the clap." Hooks said, Sandra laughed out loud at Sonny's story and then covered her eyes as if embarrassed by her laugh, which was loud and hearty, not the kind of laugh you'd expect from a little girl. Sonny liked the sound of it, and he laughed along with her until he looked up and saw Mrs. Colombo scowling at them, as if they were both behaving shamelessly. He nudged Sandra, who looked up to the window and waved to her grandmother, a little bit of defiance in the gesture that made Sonny break out in a wide grin. Mrs. Colombo, as always, was dressed in black, her round face carved out of wrinkles, a noticeable line of dark hair over her upper lip. What a difference between her and her granddaughter, who was wearing a bright yellow dress, as if to celebrate the unusual warmth of the day. Sandra's dark eyes had a sparkle to them when she laughed, and Sonny resolved to make her laugh more often. Sonny checked his wristwatch and said, "Cork's going to pick me up in a minute." He glanced at the window, and when he saw that Mrs. Colombo wasn't in sight, he touched Sandra's hair, which he'd been wanting to do since he first came to meet her and sit on the stoop with her. Sandra smiled at him before she looked up to the window nervously, and then took his hand, squeezed it, and pushed it away. "Talk to your grandmother," Sonny said. "See if she'll let me take you out to dinner." Sandra said, "She won't let me get in a car with you, Sonny. She wouldn't let me get in a car with any boy," she added. "But you," she pointed at Sonny playfully, "you have a reputation." "What reputation?" Sonny said. "I'm an angel, I swear. Ask my mother." "It was your mother who warned me about you." "No," Sonny said. "Really?" "Really. Madon, my own mother." When Sandra laughed again, Mrs. Colombo appeared in the window. "Sandra!" she shouted down to the street. "Basta!" "What?" Sandra shouted back. Sonny, surprised to hear the touch of anger in Sandra's voice, stood up and said, "I have to be going anyway." And then he looked up to Mrs. Colombo and said, "I'm going now, Mrs. Colombo. Thank you for letting me visit with Sandra. Grazie." When Mrs. Colombo nodded to him, he said to Sandra, "Work on her. Tell her we'll go with another couple and I'll have you back by 10. "Sonny," Sandra said, "she has a fit just because I'm talking to you on the steps. She won't let me get in your car and go to dinner with you." "Work on her," Sonny repeated. Sandra pointed down the block to a corner store with a window that faced the street. It was a candy store/soda shop, with a booth in the window where people could sit and drink their sodas. "Maybe I can get her to let you take me there," she said, "where she can still see us from the window." "There?" Sonny said, looking at the corner store. "I'll see," Sandra yelled up to her grandmother politely in Italian. "I'm coming right up," and gave Sonny a parting smile before disappearing into the building. Sonny waved to Mrs. Colombo and then walked down the block and took a seat on another stoop to wait for Cork. Above him, a little girl was leaning on a windowsill and singing Body and Soul, as if she were 20 years older and on stage at the El Morocco. Across the street, an attractive woman, much older than Sonny, was hanging laundry on a clothesline strung from the top of her fire escape. Sonny tried to catch her eye. He knew she had noticed him, but she went about her business without once looking down to the street and then disappeared through her window. He straightened his jacket, rested his elbows on his knees, and found himself thinking again about the previous night, when his father had asked about Tom. Vito wanted to know if Sonny was aware of Tom's fooling around, going to clubs in Harlem and picking up tramps. Sonny had lied, said he knew nothing about it, and Vito had looked at him with a mix of worry and anger. A look that stuck with Sonny and was coming back to him now as he waited for Cork to take him to their next job. Sonny had seen worry and anger in Vito before, but there was something else in his expression, something that looked like fear, and that bothered Sonny most of all, that touch of fear in his father's eyes. What would it be like, Sonny wondered, if Vito found out about him? Sonny himself felt something like fear at the prospect, and then he angrily pushed the feeling aside. His father was a gangster. This was something everybody in the world knew, and what, Sonny was supposed to bust his ass all day with the rest of the jamopes for a couple of lousy bucks? For how long? Years? Que cazzo, he said out loud, and then looked up to see Cork parked at the curb and grinning at him. Que cazzo yourself, Cork said, as he leaned across the seat and threw open the door for Sonny. Sonny got in the car, laughing at the sound of an Italian curse on Cork's lips. What do you hear, what do you say? Cork flipped the glove box open, revealing a couple of shiny new snub-nosed .38s. He took one, slipped it into his jacket pocket, and pulled out onto the street. Sonny took the other one and looked it over. Nico get these from Vinny? Like you said, Cork answered. Don't you trust Nico? Sure, Sonny said. Just checking. Jesus, Cork yelled, and he flung himself back in his seat as if he'd just been hit with a bolt of lightning. I'm glad to be getting my arse out of that bakery. Eileen's been on the rag for days. Yeah? Sonny asked. About what? What do I know? Cork said. This, that, and the next thing. I ate a cupcake without asking, like I only been doing all my bleeding life, and isn't she screaming at me like I'm sending her to the poorhouse? Mother of God, Sonny. I'm taking one of those expensive bottles of wine for myself. I deserve it. The hell you are, Sonny said. Not at $100 a bottle. Cork grinned and said, Now isn't this the life? And that car's coming through the tunnel all by its lonesome, you say? You sure about that? That's the word, Sonny said. 2-door Essex Terraplane, new, black with white walls. Now isn't this the life? Cork repeated, and he pulled a wool cap out of his jacket pocket. We're getting there early just to be safe. We'll have to wait around. He looked out the window and figured they had a while yet before they got to the tunnel. Park where you got a good view of everybody coming out. The rest of the guys will meet us in about a half hour. Sure, Cork said. Listen, Sonny, forget it, Sonny said. But I'm telling you, you got my old man all wrong. Sonny stretched out his legs, threw his head back, and closed his eyes. And 10 minutes later, when the car slowed and came to a stop, he sat up again and looked around. The first thing he saw was a black Essex with white walls coming out of the tunnel. Son of a bitch, he said, and pointed out the car to Cork. That's it. The guys aren't here yet, Cork said, and he spun around in his seat, looking up and down the block for any sign of the others. They ain't going to be here for a while, Sonny said. He scratched the top of his head and ran his fingers through his hair. What the hell, he said. We'll do it ourselves. Us, Cork said. You're not supposed to be seen. Sonny took a knit cap out of his pocket and pulled it down low on his forehead. Oh, that's good, Cork said sarcastically. No one will ever recognize you. Sonny adjusted the cap, trying to stuff his hair into it. We'll take a chance, he said. You willin'? Cork pulled the car onto the street and started toward the tunnel in the Essex. Follow it, Sonny said. Good plan, Cork said, and laughed, meaning what else was there to do but follow it. Sonny shoved him and said, Don't be a wise guy. Once out of the tunnel, the car headed crosstown on Canal. Cork followed, keeping a car or two between them. The Essex was being driven by a stocky guy with gray hair who looked like he could be a banker. The woman next to him looked like a banker's wife. Her hair was pinned up and she wore a white shawl over a dowdy gray dress. Cork said, "You sure that's the car?" "New black Essex Terraplane, two-door white-wall tires." Sonny stuck his hand under his cap and scratched his head again. "It's not like you see a new Essex every couple of blocks." "Jesus," Cork said. "So you have a plan, genius." Sonny took the snub nose out of his pocket and checked the cylinder. He ran a finger over the Smith & Wesson engraved on the short barrel. "Wait till they turn onto a side street," he said. "Cut 'em off and take the car." "And if there's people around?" "Then we do it quietly," Sonny said. "Quietly," Cork repeated. A few seconds later, in a delayed reaction, he laughed. When the Essex turned on Worcester, Sonny said, "Where's he going? Up to Greenwich Village?" Cork said, "Jesus, look at those two. They look like they're on their way to a Rotary dinner." "Sure," Sonny said, a smile growing in his face. "Who'd stop those two, right?" "Sure," Cork said. "Good point. Unless, of course, you're wrong." Cork drove slowly along a cobblestone section of Worcester directly behind the Essex. The street was quiet aside from a handful of people walking along the sidewalk and a few cars going by in the opposite direction. Sonny looked behind him, and when he saw no one, he said, "You know what? Go ahead, cut him off." Cork grimaced as if to say he wasn't at all sure about the plan, and then gunned the engine, jumped in front of the Essex, and cut it off. Sonny leapt out of the car before it was fully stopped, went around to the driver's door of the Essex, and yanked it open. "What is this?" the driver asked. "What's going on?" Sonny kept one hand on the snub nose in his pocket and the other on the steering wheel. Cork, at the front of the car, opened the hood. "What's he doing?" the woman asked. "Hell if I know," Sonny said. "Young man," the driver said. "What's going on here?" The woman said, "Albert, I think they're stealing our car." Sonny looked to Cork as he came around behind him. "I think we might have the wrong car." Cork pulled a knife from his pocket, snapped it open, and Sean O'Rourke held his mother in his arms and patted her back as she sobbed, her face buried in his chest. They were outside Donnie's bedroom door, and all around them others were speaking softly. The apartment, crowded with friends and family, smelled of fresh-baked bread, which the Donnellys, Rick and Billy, had brought with them and left on a kitchen table, crowded with gifts of food and flowers. Word of Donnie O'Rourke's murder had spread quickly through Hell's Kitchen, though Donnie was not dead. He'd been badly beaten, suffering cracked ribs and internal bleeding, but he wasn't dead. He was in his bed at that moment, being attended by Doc Flaherty, who had already reported that nothing afflicting Donnie was life-threatening. His sight, though, could not be saved. He was blind, and he would remain blind. Flaherty had told Willie, "It was the bacterial infection that did it. If you'd have found him sooner, I might have saved his sight, but as it is, there's nothing I can do." Willie had gone looking for Donnie after he failed to show up that evening. He'd searched everywhere he could think, everywhere except the basement, where Donnie had spent that night and the following morning, lapsing in and out of consciousness, blindfolded with a disease-infested rag. Willie didn't find him until the superintendent came knocking at his door. Above the crowded apartment, Willie sat on the ledge of the roof facing his pigeons, where the birds cooed and pecked at a mixture of seed and grain he had just fed them. Pete Murray sat on one side of him, and Cor Gibson on the other. Beneath them, on the street, the last cars of a freight train clattered toward the yards. The sun was bright, and the men had all taken off their jackets. They held them folded in their laps as they spoke. Willie had just vowed to kill Luca Brazzi and his gang, every one of them. Cor and Pete had exchanged glances. Cor tapped his shillelagh against the tar paper roof in a way that suggested both sadness and anger. "What about Kelly?" he asked. "Why isn't she here?" "No one's seen Kelly for weeks," he said, and he spit on the roof, closing the subject. "All I'm interested in now is seeing Luca Brazzi dead." "Ah, Willie," Pete Murray said finally. He grasped the ledge with both hands as if to steady himself. His shirt sleeves were pulled taut over muscles thickened by years on the docks and in the yards unloading freight. His weathered face was red and splotchy, covered chin and cheek and neck with speckles of gray and black hairs. "Will O'Rourke," he said, and paused, looking for the right words. "We'll get them," he said. "This I promise you. But we'll do it the right way." "What's right or wrong about killing somebody?" Will said, and he looked first to Cor and then back to Pete. "We find him and blast him." Cor said, "Think about that, Willie. How'd that work out last time you tried it?" "Next time I won't miss," Will said, and he jumped to his feet. "Sit down." Pete took Willie by the wrist and pulled him to the ledge. "Listen to me, Will O'Rourke," he said, with Will's wrist still firmly in his hand. "We went after Brassy half-cocked, just like the Irish. And you see where that got us." Cor leaned over his shillelagh and said, almost as if he was speaking to himself, "We need to take a lesson from the Italians." "What's that mean?" Willie said. "It means," Pete said, "that we need to be patient and to plan. And when we make our move, to do it right." "Ah, Jesus." Willie yanked his arm free from Murray's grip. "We need to do it now," he said, "while we're all together, before we go off our own ways and forget about it, like always." "We're not going to forget about what Luca did to Donnie," Pete said. He took Will's wrist in his hand again, but gently this time. "It's disgusting what he did, and we'll make him pay for it. For that and 50 other things. But we'll be patient. We'll wait for the right time." "And when will that be?" Willie asked. "When do you imagine the right time will be to take on Luca Brasi and all the rest of the Dagos?" "The Italians are here to stay," Cor said. "That we have to live with. There's too many of them." "So," Willie said to Pete, "when's this right time coming?" Pete said, "Winter 1934. 13. Snowdrifts 2 and 3 feet high piled up along the water's edge like dunes as snow continued to fall through moonlight onto sand and over the choppy black skin of Little Neck Bay. Luca's thoughts were running away with him, and he figured it was the mix of coke and pills. One minute he was thinking about his mother, and the next about Kelly. His mother kept threatening to kill herself. Kelly was almost 7 months pregnant. He didn't usually mix coke and pills, and now he felt as though he was walking through a dream, and he figured it was mostly the pills, but the coke probably was part of it. And he figured out here in the cold and snow along this strip of sand overlooking the bay, he might walk it off, but he was freezing, and he still couldn't keep his thoughts straight. A couple of lines from Minnie the Moocher popped into his head. She messed around with a bloke named Smokey. She loved him, though he was cokey. He laughed and quit laughing when he heard the crazy high cackle like some lunatic nearby. He wrapped his arms around his chest, as if he was trying to keep himself from flying apart, and he walked a little closer to the water, which was dark and choppy, and something about it disturbing, the black expanse of it rushing at the shore. Behind him, in the farmhouse, Kelly was spotting. She wanted him to take her to the hospital. They'd been doing pills and coke all day, and now she wanted to go to the hospital in the midst of a snowstorm because she was spotting. Luca looked out over the water. He was bundled up in a fur coat with galoshes over dress shoes. A full moon peeked out from a break in the clouds. His fedora was soaked, and he stopped to shake snow off the brim. The Giants won the series, and the city went wild, and a brutal winter settled in. It was something below zero, he could tell by the way the air felt when he breathed through his nose. He'd made a killing on the World Series, betting on the Giants early, while the Senators were still the big favorite. He had a lot of money. More money than the boys or anyone else knew, and he tried to tell his mother this, but she wouldn't shut up about it all being her fault. Kelly never quit whining. She whined and he fed her pills. He hadn't dumped her in the ocean, and now she was 7 months gone. Luca saw his mother's round white belly in his mind's eye. His father had been excited at first. He had come home with flowers once early before things changed. Luca couldn't even know for sure that the baby Kelly was carrying was his, and why should he care? She was a whore, her and her whole race, a race of whores. Something about her face, her body, made him want to lie close to her and hold her. One minute he wanted to smash her, the next he wanted to hold her. When he was with Kelly, they were crazy with pills and lately coke. Something they did to each other, with each other. Luca looked up to the sky and snow fell on his face and into his mouth. He massaged his temples while water hissed over sand, and snow fell on the bay in flakes that drifted down out of darkness into darkness, only white and fat and drifting in between, while they were falling before the choppy water swallowed them, the moonlight like a golden trail over the surface of the bay. He breathed and was motionless, and the sound of water and wind eased him some, brought him down to earth. The bay in front of him stopped being disturbing, and instead again it was inviting. He was tired. He was tired of all of it. He hadn't dumped Kelly in the ocean because he didn't want to give up holding her at night when she was quiet, sleeping alongside him. Because he didn't know why. Only that he wanted her. If she would only shut up. And if only she wasn't 7 months gone, things might be better. Even if there would still be his mother and her constant whining and the headaches that wouldn't quit and all the bullshit, unending, that just went on and on and on. He took his hat off, brushed snow from the brim, blocked it, and put it back on. And because there was nothing else to do, he started towards the road and the farmhouse. Luca's headache came back as he trudged up the driveway to his white-clapboard house, with long icicles hanging down from the gutters, a sheet of ice several feet long in places. Some of the icicles reached all the way to the ground. Through the basement windows, a red glow seeped out onto the snow, and when Luca crouched to look through one of the narrow windows, he saw Vinny in his undershirt, shoveling coal into the furnace, and even with the wind whistling under the eaves and through the bare branches of an ancient, massive tree that hovered over the house as if keeping guard, he could hear the furnace rumble and groan as Vinny heaved wide. Vinny came up from the basement, buttoning his shirt. "Hey, boss," he said by way of a greeting. He took a seat next to Hooks. Gorski, holding a dish of bacon and eggs in one hand and a fork in the other, came over from the stove and stood behind Eddie. Hooks and Eddie were going head to head. Hooks called and raised 20, and Eddie muttered something in Polish. Luca took a long swig from a bottle of scotch in front of Hooks. "Freezing out," he said to no one in particular. And then he left Eddie staring nervously at his cards and went upstairs to the bedroom. He glanced at his wristwatch. It was a little after 10 at night. On the way up the stairs, he stopped and looked out the hall window where a line of icicles partially blocked the view of the driveway and the trees and the snowdrifts in the road. It was like looking out through a set of teeth at a frozen world, and Luca felt as though he was watching a movie. It was a weird sensation, and he didn't like it when it happened, and it seemed to be happening more and more. It was as if everything outside of him was happening on a movie screen, and he was out in the dark someplace, where the audience sat, watching it all. He had waited in front of the window with his head throbbing, and he tried to blink it away, the sensation of watching a movie, and when it wouldn't quit, he'd climb the rest of the stairs to the bedroom. He found Kelly, pale and disheveled, the sheets wet and blood-streaked, kicked to the bottom of the bed. "Luca," Kelly said, "my water broke. The baby's coming." Luca could barely make out the words. She issued a few words, paused, breathed, issued a few more. Luca pulled a sheet over her, covering up the white mound of her belly. "Are you sure?" he asked. "It's too early." Kelly nodded. "I need to go to the hospital." On the night table beside Kelly, the bottle of pills he'd left her was empty. "How many of these did you take?" he asked, showing her the bottle. "I don't know," she said, and looked away. Luca took another bottle of pills out of his jacket pocket, and shook out 2 into his hand. "Here," he said, showing them to her. "Take a couple more." Kelly pushed his hand away. "Luca," she said, struggling to get the words out. "The baby's coming. You gotta take me to the hospital." Luca sat beside her on the bed. He touched her shoulder. "Luca," Kelly said. Softly, as if talking to himself, Luca said, "Shut up, Kelly. You're a whore, but I'll take care of you." Kelly's lips moved, but no sound came out. Her eyes closed and she appeared to be falling asleep. Luca started to get up from the bed, but as soon as he had lifted his weight from the mattress, Kelly leapt at him and clutched his arm, pulling him back. "You've got to take me to the hospital," she yelled. "The baby's coming." Luca, startled, yanked his arm from Kelly's grasp and pushed her to the mattress. "Crazy fucking gash," he said. "I just told you I'd take care of you." He picked up the phone from the night table, wanting to throw it at her face. And then he put it down again and left the room with her calling to him, weakly again, saying his name over and over. In the kitchen, a husky black voice came over the radio singing "Goodnight, Irene." The boys around the table, his boys and the 2 Polacks, were all quiet, studying their cards or staring at the table. In the basement, the furnace groaned, and throughout the house, radiators gurgled and hissed. Luca took his fur coat off the hall tree. "Vinny," he said, "we're going for a ride." Vinny looked up from his cards. As always, the kid's clothes looked a size too big for him. "Boss," he said. Light seeped out along the top edge of Michael's blanket where he had pulled it over his head. He was huddled down under it, reading by flashlight. Across the room from Michael, in a matching single bed, Fredo lay on his side with his head propped up on his hand and watched snow falling in the streetlight beyond their bedroom window. A Jell-O commercial downstairs on the radio had just segued into Jack Benny yelling at Rochester. Fredo strained to hear the radio, could make out only a few words here and there. "Hey, Michael," Fredo said softly, since they were both supposed to be sleeping. "What are you doing?" Michael, after a moment, answered, "Reading." "Jedru," Fredo said. "What are you always reading for? You're going to turn out to be some kind of pointy head." "Go to sleep, Fredo." "You go to sleep," Fredo said. "We might not even have school tomorrow with all this snow." Michael turned off the flashlight and pulled the covers down. He settled on his side, facing Fredo. "How come you don't care about school?" he asked. "Don't you want to make something of yourself?" "Ah, shut up," Fredo said. "You're a pointy head." Michael put his history book on the floor beside his bed and stood the flashlight on top of it. "Pop's taking me to City Hall to meet Councilman Fisher," he said, and he turned onto his back and settled into bed. "The councilman's giving me a tour of City Hall," he added, talking to the ceiling. "I know all about it," Fredo said. "Pop asked me if I wanted to go too." "Yeah?" Michael said. He turned to face Fredo again. "You didn't want to go?" "Why would I want to tour City Hall?" Fredo said. "I'm no pointy head." "You don't have to be a pointy head to be interested in how your own government works." "Yes, you do," Fredo said. "I'm going to work for Pop when I get out of school. I'll be a salesman or something to start, I figure. Then Pop will bring me into the business and I'll be making plenty of dough." Downstairs, a peal of laughter issued from the radio. Fredo and Michael both turned to look at the door, as if they might be able to see what was so funny. Michael said, "How come you want to work for Pop, Fredo? Don't you want to do anything on your own?" "I'll do something on my own," Fredo said. "Only I'll be working for Pop, too." "Why? What do you want to do, hotshot?" Michael put his hands under his head as a big gust of wind smacked into the house, rattling the window glass. "I don't know," he said in answer to Fredo's question. "I'm interested in politics. I think I might be a congressman, maybe even a senator." "Vafancool," Fredo whispered. "Why not president?" "Yeah," Michael said. "Why not?" 'Cause you're Italian, Fredo shot back. Don't you know anything? What's Italian got to do with it? Listen, Pally, Fredo said. There's never been an Italian president, and there never will be. Ever. Why not? Michael said. Why won't there ever be an Italian president, Fredo? Maron, Fredo said. Hey, Michael, I got news for you. We're wops. We're guineas, capiche? There ain't never gonna be no wop president. Why not? Michael repeated. We got a wop mayor. People love him. First, Fredo said, leaning out of the bed toward Michael, LaGuardia's a Neapolitan. He's not Sicilian like us. And next, he ain't ever gonna be president. Michael was quiet then.